Baby found a pregnant Mustang Foal half buried in mud. What the child did next moved everyone to tears. What happened next will shock you. This incredible story of courage, hope, and an unbreakable bond will leave you speechless. If this touches your heart, make sure to like, share, and let us know where you're listening from in the comments below. The small town of Pinecrest wasn't known for much. Nestled between the rugged mountains and vast plains of Wyoming, it was the kind of place where travelers stopped only to refuel before continuing on their journey. For most, it was merely a dot on the map, a collection of weathered buildings and friendly but reserved locals who preferred the quiet rhythm of rural life to the chaos of the city. For Marcus Reed, it was a last resort, a place to rebuild his shattered life and raise his daughter away from the nightmares that had followed him home from Afghanistan. The modest ranch house at the edge of town wasn't much, but with its view of the distant wild horse territory and the endless Wyoming sky, it felt as close to peace as he could imagine. The transition to civilian life had been harder than Marcus could have ever anticipated. After 3 tours as an Army Ranger, the ordinary world seemed simultaneously too loud and too quiet. Too many people in the grocery store, too few watchful eyes guarding the perimeter. His hands, once steady enough to disarm explosive devices under gunfire, now sometimes shook so badly he couldn't hold his coffee cup. The only steady presence in his life was Lily, his 4-year-old daughter, with eyes the color of the Wyoming sky and a spirit as wild as the Mustangs that roamed the nearby plains. She had her mother's smile, a thought that still cut through Marcus like a knife. Sarah had been gone for almost 2 years now, a victim of the cancer that had been diagnosed during his last deployment. He'd made it home just in time to say goodbye, to make promises about taking care of their daughter that sometimes felt impossible to keep. "Lilybug, stay where Daddy can see you," Marcus called out as he worked on repairing the fence line of their small property. The spring rains had been relentless this year, washing out sections of the old wooden fence and turning parts of his land into a muddy mess. Lily nodded solemnly from where she was playing with a collection of toy horses by the porch. She didn't answer. She hadn't spoken a word in the 18 months since her mother's funeral. The doctors called it selective mutism, triggered by trauma. Marcus simply called it another failure, another way he couldn't protect his child from pain. The therapist in Cody, 40 miles away, assured him that with time and patience, Lily would find her voice again. But patience had never been Marcus's strong suit, and time seemed to be healing nothing. He watched her from the corner of his eye as he worked, hammering posts with more force than necessary, as if he could pound his frustration into the unyielding earth. Lily was arranging her toy horses in a perfect line, her small face serious in concentration. She had always loved horses, even before they'd moved to Wyoming. Sarah had promised her riding lessons someday, another promise Marcus wasn't sure how to keep. Their nearest neighbor, Mrs. Blackfeather, an elderly Shoshone woman who lived a mile down the road, often said that Lily had an old soul. "That child sees things others miss," she would say with a knowing nod. "The spirits speak to her, even if she doesn't speak back." Marcus had nodded politely, not sure what to make of such claims, but sometimes when he caught Lily staring at the distant mountains with a look far too knowing for her 4 years, he wondered if Mrs. Blackfeather might be right. Another hour of work, then lunch, Marcus called, checking his watch. The sky was darkening to the west, heavy clouds gathering on the horizon. The forecast had mentioned possible thunderstorms, and the last thing they needed was more rain. Their roof already leaked in 2 places, and the basement had flooded twice this spring. When he looked back to check on Lily, she was gone. The line of toy horses stood abandoned on the porch steps. "Lily!" His voice cracked as panic immediately seized his throat. "Lily!" He dropped his hammer and scanned the yard, his heart hammering against his ribs as memories of other searches Would be for hidden explosives, for wounded comrades, flashed through his mind. The property backed up to open rangeland that eventually led to wild horse territory. They were miles from the nearest herd, but the terrain was dangerous. Flash. Blood channels, hidden gullies, rocky outcroppings, 1,000 dangers for a small child. He saw it then. Tiny footprints in the soft mud leading away from the house toward the eastern pasture that ran alongside a normally dry creek bed. The creek that wouldn't be dry now, not after weeks of spring rain. "Lily!" he shouted, breaking into a run, following the small footprints. Training kicked in, track, assess, respond, but this was his daughter, not a military operation. And the calm focus that had served him in combat was shattered by parental terror. The first raindrops began to fall as Marcus followed the tracks across the pasture. Fat, cold drops that quickly intensified, threatening to wash away Lily's trail. The footprints led toward a section of the property he rarely visited, a rocky area near the creek bed where the land dipped into a shallow ravine. In dry seasons, it was just another stretch of Wyoming wilderness, but with the recent rains, the sound of rushing water reached him before he saw it. The normally docile creek had transformed into a churning ribbon of muddy water. The footprints disappeared at its edge. "No, no, no," Marcus muttered, his mind filling with terrible images. Lily swept away in the current. Lily fallen and hurt. Lily alone and terrified. He sprinted along the bank, scanning desperately for any sign of his daughter. The rain fell harder now, plastering his shirt to his skin, obscuring his vision. "Lily!" His voice was swallowed by a crack of thunder. Then, through the curtain of rain, he saw a flash of pink. Lily's jacket. She wasn't in the water. She was crouched on a muddy slope about 20 yards ahead, her small body leaning forward in intense concentration. Relief surged through Marcus, quickly followed by anger born of fear. "Lily, what are you—" The words died in his throat as he drew closer and saw what had captured his daughter's attention. Lily was digging frantically in the mud, her small hands already caked with wet earth. Before her, partially submerged in the muddy slope, was a shape, something alive. Marcus approached slowly, his mind struggling to make sense of what he was seeing. As he drew closer, the shape became clearer through the rain. A horse? No. Smaller. A foal. Its coat, what he could see of it, was a rich chestnut color, though most was covered in mud. It lay so still that for a moment Marcus thought it was dead. But then he saw the shallow rise and fall of its side. It was breathing. Lily looked up at her father, her eyes wide and pleading. Though she made no sound, her message was clear. "Help me save it." Marcus knelt beside his daughter, the mud soaking through his jeans. Up close, he could see that the foal was young, very young, probably born this spring. Its eyes were wide with fear, nostrils flaring with each labored breath. And there was something else. The small barrel of its body seemed disproportionately large. "It's pregnant," Marcus whispered in disbelief, then corrected himself. "No, not pregnant. Too young." He gently placed his hand on the foal's mud-covered side, feeling the distinct movement beneath his palm. "She's bloated. Internal injuries, maybe." Lily shook her head vehemently, pointing at the foal's swollen belly and then making a rocking motion with her arms. "You think she's pregnant? That's impossible, Lilybug. She's just a baby herself." But even as he said it, Marcus wasn't sure. He'd grown up around horses in Montana, but he was no expert on wild mustangs. Could a foal this young be pregnant? It seemed biologically impossible. Yet the distension of her belly was distinct. What was more pressing was the fact that the young horse was trapped, half buried in a mudslide that threatened to completely cover her as the rain continued to erode. The slope, and with the creek rising, the entire area could be underwater within hours. "We need to get her out," Marcus said, beginning to dig alongside his daughter. The rain came down harder now, turning the soil to slick mud that slid back into the hole almost as quickly as they could remove it. Marcus's fingers scraped against something hard as he dug deeper around the foal's neck. Not rock, but metal. "What the hell?" he muttered, carefully clearing more mud away. It was a metal wire, no, a thin cable, wrapped around the foal's neck like a snare. It disappeared into the mud, anchoring the animal to something below. This was no accident. Someone had deliberately trapped and abandoned this foal. Anger surged through Marcus, a focused, familiar heat that pushed aside his confusion. Someone had done this deliberately, left a young animal to die slowly, painfully, alone. "Hang on, girl," he told the foal, whose dark eyes watched him with a mixture of fear and desperate hope. "We're going to get you out of here." As Marcus worked to clear more mud from around the foal, Lily continued to dig with single-minded determination. Her hands were scratched and bleeding from the rocky mud, but she didn't slow or stop. The rain had soaked them both, turning the rescue effort into a miserable, cold battle against the elements and time. With each scoop of mud they cleared, more seemed to slide back into place. The creek was rising visibly now, the water edging closer to where they worked. If they couldn't free the foal soon, they'd all be in danger from the flash flood that was clearly developing. "We need something to cut this cable," Marcus said, examining where it was wound around the foal's neck. It hadn't cut into the flesh yet, but it was tight enough to restrict movement and would eventually strangle the animal if left in place. He searched his pockets, hoping for a multi-tool or pocket knife, but found nothing useful. "Lily, stay with her. Keep digging around her legs. I'm going to run back to the house for wire cutters." But as Marcus started to rise, the foal let out a high-pitched whine of distress. Its body tensed, a shudder running through the visible, portions not buried in mud. "What's wrong, girl?" he asked, placing his hand on the foal's neck. Another shudder ran through her body. With a jolt of alarm, Marcus realized what was happening. "She's going into labor." It wasn't possible. Everything he knew about horses told him this foal was far too young to be pregnant, yet the contractions rippling across her belly were unmistakable. "This can't be happening," he muttered, looking desperately around for something, anything that might help. They couldn't deliver a foal here, in the mud and the rain, with the mother half buried and the creek rising ever closer. But they had no choice. Lily's eyes were wide with fear now, her small hand resting on the young horse's head in a gesture of comfort that belied her years. The look she gave her father held a simple message: do something. Marcus had been trained to handle combat trauma, to apply tourniquets under gunfire, to stabilize pneumothorax with nothing but plastic and tape. But he'd never delivered a foal, let alone one from a mother who was herself barely more than a baby. "Okay," he said, forcing calm into his voice. "We need to free her hindquarters first. That's where the foal will come from." With renewed urgency, they dug around the young horse's back legs. The cable around her neck was still a problem, but the immediate need was to create space for the birth. The pregnant foal's contractions were coming faster now. Her breathing labored and quick. As they worked, the young horse's eyes never left Lily's face. There was an intelligence there, a connection that seemed to transcend the usual boundaries between human and animal. Lily worked with a focused intensity that reminded Marcus painfully of her mother. Sarah had had that same look when concentrating on a difficult case at the hospital where she'd worked as a pediatric nurse. Finally, after what seemed like hours but was probably only 20 minutes, they had cleared enough mud to expose the foal's hindquarters. But the cable remained, tethering her neck to whatever was buried deeper in the mud. "I need to try to cut this," Marcus decided, examining the cable more closely. It was thin but strong, probably steel core with a vinyl coating, the kind used for small aircraft or specialized industrial applications. Not something that would be randomly out here in the wilderness. Someone had placed it deliberately. He searched the area for anything with an edge. Finding a sharp stone, he began sawing at the cable, but made little progress. The foal's contractions were coming regularly now, her breathing increasingly labored. "This isn't working," he said after a few frustrated minutes. "I need real tools." Lily tugged at his sleeve, then pointed to her own neck, then to the foal's, making a gesture like slipping something over her head. "You think we can slip it off instead of cutting it?" Marcus asked, understanding dawning. "It's worth a try." The cable was tight, but the foal was small and slender. If they could just get enough mud cleared from around her neck and shoulders. Working. Carefully, Marcus began to maneuver the cable upward over the foal's head. It caught on her ears, making her flinch in pain. "I'm sorry, girl," he murmured. "Just a little more." With gentle persistence, he managed to work the cable past the sensitive ears and over the widest part of the foal's skull. One final, careful lift, and the cable came free. The foal's neck was raw where the cable had rubbed, but she was no longer tethered to the earth. "We did it," Marcus breathed, relief flooding through him. But their victory was short-lived. The foal, though no longer restrained, still couldn't rise from her half-buried position. Her legs remained trapped, and her labor was progressing rapidly. "We need to get her out of here," Marcus said, looking anxiously at the rising creek. "If that water reaches us, we'll all be in trouble." Lily nodded solemnly, then did something that stopped Marcus's heart for a moment. She leaned forward and placed her forehead against the foal's, closing her eyes as if in deep concentration. The foal, despite her distress, grew momentarily still. Then, to Marcus's amazement, Lily spoke, her first words in 18 months. "Trust," she whispered, her voice raspy from disuse. "Trust us." Marcus froze, afraid that any movement might break the spell, might send Lily back into her silent world. His daughter had spoken. To a horse, yes, but she had spoken. The moment was shattered by another contraction gripping the young horse, this one stronger than before, pulling a pained whiny from her throat. "We need to move now," Marcus said, galvanized into action by the foal's distress. "The birth is coming whether we're ready or not." Working quickly, Marcus cleared more mud from around the foal's legs. Each minute that passed brought the creek waters closer. The rain showed no sign of letting up, and the temperature was dropping with the storm. "We can't deliver the foal here," Marcus said, more to himself than to Lily. "We need to get her somewhere warm and dry." His truck was parked back at the house, but carrying a pregnant foal that far in these conditions seemed impossible. The young horse was weak, her legs likely numb from being trapped for who knew how long. Even if they could free her completely, she probably couldn't walk. Marcus stripped off his jacket, despite the chill, and laid it across the foal's shivering body. "We need to make some kind of stretcher," he told Lily, who had returned to her silent state, though her eyes remained alert and determined. He scanned the area for materials, branches, anything they could use to fashion a makeshift carrier. There was nothing but mud and rocks. In the distance, thunder rolled across the plains, and the rain fell harder, turning their rescue site into a deepening quagmire. As if sensing their dilemma, the foal let out another distressed whiny. Her eyes, large and dark against her mud-caked face, held a depth of intelligence that Marcus found unsettling. This wasn't just fear or pain he saw there. It was understanding. Lily placed her small hand on the foal's muzzle, and the animal visibly calmed at her touch. Again, Marcus was struck by the connection between his daughter and this wild creature. It was as if they shared some secret language, some bond that went beyond normal human-animal interaction. "Lilybug, I need to get help," Marcus finally decided. "I'm going to run back to the house and call Mrs. Blackfeather. She knows about horses. Maybe she can—" His words were cut short by a sound that chilled him more than the rain. The unmistakable rush of water surging over banks. He turned to see the creek, swollen with rain and runoff from the mountains, breaching its eastern edge less than 50 yards away. "We're out of time," he said, mind racing. We have to move now, with no time. To fashion a proper stretcher, Marcus made a quick decision. He positioned himself behind the foal's head and slid his arms under her neck and forelegs. Lily, get on the other side. We'll have to carry her as best we can. Lily moved without hesitation, placing her small hands under the foal's barrel. Together they lifted. The foal was heavier than Marcus expected, perhaps 200 pounds of wet, mud-covered weight. His back screamed in protest, an old injury from his second tour flaring with pain. The foal let out a frightened noise but didn't struggle, as if she understood this painful movement was necessary for her survival. They managed to raise her front, and a few inches, enough to pull her partly free from the sucking mud that had held her captive. Just a little more, Marcus gasped, adjusting his grip. His arms burned with the effort, memories of carrying wounded comrades flashing unbidden through his mind. Inch by excruciating inch, they extracted the foal from her muddy prison. Her legs were finally free, though they hung limply, either from weakness or injury. Marcus couldn't tell. The water from the creek was spreading across the lower ground. Now, a sheet of muddy current advancing toward them with alarming speed. "We need to get up the slope," Marcus directed, nodding toward higher ground. The foal was free but seemingly unable to stand. Her sides heaved with exhaustion, and contractions continued to ripple across her swollen belly. With no other option, Marcus bent and scooped the foal into his arms, staggering slightly under the weight. The motion sent fresh pain lancing through his back, but he gritted his teeth against it. He had carried heavier burdens in worse conditions. At least no one was shooting at them. "Move, Lily!" he called as his daughter stood, momentarily frozen, watching the approaching water. She snapped into action, scrambling up the slick slope ahead of him. The ascent was brutal. Every step was a battle against mud that seemed determined to pull them back down. Marcus's boots slipped and slid, finding purchase only to lose it again. The foal lay quiet in his arms, her dark eyes watching his face as if measuring his determination against the forces arrayed against them. Halfway up the slope, Marcus's left knee buckled, another war souvenir making its presence known. He fell to one knee, nearly dropping his precious cargo. Lily turned back, her face stricken with fear. "I'm okay," he grunted, regaining his footing. "Keep going." By the time they reached the top of the slope, Marcus was breathing hard, his muscles trembling with exertion. The water had claimed the spot where the foal had been trapped, turning it into part of the swollen creek. If they had been even 5 minutes later— "We need to get her home," Marcus said, adjusting his hold on the foal. The house was nearly half a mile away across the pasture, an impossible distance to carry such a burden, but there was no shelter. Here, no protection from the storm that continued to rage around them. As if in answer to his unspoken dilemma, Lily pointed to something in the distance, a dark shape against the grey landscape. Marcus squinted through the rain. It was the old shed near the property line, a relic from the previous owner that he'd been meaning to tear down. It wasn't much, but it would provide some shelter from the elements. "Good thinking, Lilybug," he said, setting off in that direction. The shed was maybe 200 yards away, still a formidable distance with his burden, but more manageable than trying to reach the house. The foal was growing restless in his arms, the contractions coming more frequently now. Marcus could feel the movements of her unborn foal, a foal within a foal, a biological impossibility that he was witnessing firsthand. By the time they reached the shed, Marcus's arms were numb, his back a sheet of fire. The ancient structure leaned slightly to one side, its wooden walls weathered by countless Wyoming seasons, but the roof appeared mostly intact. A rusty padlock secured the door, but a firm kick from Marcus's boot snapped it off its rotted hasp. The interior was dim and dusty, cluttered with forgotten tools and empty feed sacks, but it was dry. Marcus gently laid the foal on the dirt floor, his body protesting as he straightened. Lily was already gathering the old feed sacks, creating a makeshift bed for the exhausted animal. "Good job," Marcus told her, his voice rough with exertion. "Now we need to clean her up, get this mud off." He searched the shed and found a couple of ancient horse blankets, stiff with dust, but better than nothing. There was no running water, but rain poured from a broken section of gutter just outside the door. Marcus placed one of the blankets under this improvised shower, letting it soak up the clean rainwater. "This will have to do," he muttered, returning to the foal's side with the wet blanket. Gently, he began to wipe away the layers of mud that covered her coat. Beneath the grime, her coloring emerged, a rich chestnut with a distinctive white star on her forehead. She was beautiful, even in her distress. Lily worked alongside him, her movements careful and deliberate as she cleaned the mud from the foal's face and ears. The young horse's eyes never left the child, that strange connection between them almost palpable in the dim light of the shed. As they worked, Marcus examined the foal more carefully. She was indeed very young. Her size suggested she couldn't be more than a year old, if that. Her legs were long and delicate, her frame still developing. By all logic, she should not be pregnant, and yet the movement in her swollen belly was undeniable. When they had cleaned as much mud from her as possible, Marcus turned his attention to her injuries. The skin around her neck was raw, where the cable had restrained her, but not severely damaged. Her legs appeared unbroken, but were weak and trembling. What concerned him most was the labored quality of her breathing and the increasing frequency of her contractions. "We need help," he told Lily. "I'm going to run to the house and call—" A soft noise from the foal interrupted him. She was struggling to rise, her slender legs scrambling for purchase on the dirt floor. Instinctively, Marcus moved to support her, placing his hands under her barrel. With a supreme effort, the young horse managed to get her legs under her and stand, though she swayed dangerously. "Easy, girl," Marcus murmured, steadying her. "You don't have to," but the foal seemed determined. With trembling legs, she turned in a small circle, then carefully lowered herself to the ground again, this time in a more natural position for giving birth. "She knows what she's doing," Marcus realized aloud. Despite her youth, the foal's instincts were guiding her. All they could do was support her through the process. Lily sat cross-legged by the foal's head, stroking her neck and murmuring words too soft for Marcus to hear. The foal's ears flicked toward the child, her attention seemingly divided between her body's urgent demands and this small human who had helped save her. Outside, the storm continued to rage, rain lashing against the shed's tin roof in a chaotic percussion. Inside, a different kind of storm was brewing, as the foal's body prepared to deliver a life that, by all natural laws, shouldn't exist. Marcus wished desperately for a phone, for veterinary knowledge, for anything that might help them through what was coming. All he had were memories of horses from his childhood, basic medical training from the military, and his own determination not to let this strange, brave young animal suffer. "We can do this," he told the foal, not caring how foolish it might. "Seem to talk to a horse. You're not alone anymore." The foal's contractions were coming steadily now, her sides heaving with the effort. Marcus positioned himself where he could assist if necessary, trying to recall everything he knew about equine. Birth. Normally, foals were born with front legs first, followed by the head, then the rest of the body. The process could take anywhere from minutes to hours. "Watch for the amniotic sac," he instructed Lily, who nodded solemnly. "If it doesn't break on its own, we'll need to tear it carefully so the baby can breathe." Time seemed to stretch and compress as they waited. The only sounds were the rain on the roof, the foal's labored breathing, and occasionally Marcus's quiet words of encouragement. Lily remained silent again, but her presence seemed to calm the struggling animal in a way Marcus couldn't explain. Finally, after what felt like hours but was probably less than one, Marcus saw movement. the amniotic sac appearing, a tiny hoof visible within the translucent membrane. "It's coming," he said, his mouth suddenly dry. This was happening. A foal was giving birth to another foal, something he would have sworn was impossible this morning. The birth progressed with surprising speed after that. One hoof appeared, then another, then a delicate muzzle. The amniotic sac broke naturally as the shoulders emerged, and within minutes the second foal lay on the dirt floor of the shed, impossibly tiny and perfect. "My God," Marcus breathed, staring at the newborn. It was smaller than any foal he'd ever seen, more the size of a large dog than a horse, but perfectly formed. Its coat was a deep, midnight black, in stark contrast to its mother's chestnut coloring, with a white star on its forehead that exactly matched the mother's marking. The young mother, exhausted from her ordeal, immediately turned to clean her offspring, her tongue gently washing the birth fluids from the tiny body. The baby foal, after a moment of stillness that had Marcus holding his breath, suddenly kicked its spindly legs and lifted its head, strong and vital despite its miniature size. Lily made a small sound, not quite a word, but a soft exhalation of wonder. Her eyes were wide, fixed on the miracle before them. This child who had been silent for so long seemed on the verge of speaking again. Marcus watched as mother and offspring bonded, the larger foal curling her body protectively around her tiny baby. They had done it. Against all odds, both had survived. "We should let them rest," Marcus said softly. "I need to go back to the house and call for help. They'll both need medical attention." Lily shook her head emphatically, pointing to the pair, and then making a staying motion with her hands. "You want to stay with them?" Marcus asked, understanding. Lily nodded, her expression resolute. "Okay, but I still need to get help. I'll be as quick as I can." The storm had abated somewhat, the driving rain reduced to a steady drizzle. Marcus stepped outside, orienting himself toward the house. The landscape had transformed during their time in the shed. Small streams ran where there had been dry ground, and the main creek had become a dangerous torrent. Before he could set off, the sound of an approaching vehicle caught his attention. Headlights cut through the gloom, traveling slowly down the muddy access road toward his property. For a moment Marcus tensed, thinking of the cable that had restrained the foal, evidence of human cruelty that might still present a threat. But as the vehicle drew closer, he recognized the ancient blue pickup truck that belonged to Mrs. Blackfeather. The old woman must have seen them from her property, or perhaps some sixth sense had alerted her to their plight. The truck stopped a short distance from the shed, its tires sinking into the mud. Mrs. Blackfeather emerged, wrapped in a rain poncho, her grey braids hanging damply against her shoulders. "I saw you carrying something from the creek," she called, making her way toward him. "Then the spirits told me to come." Under normal circumstances, Marcus might have sighed at such talk, but after what he had witnessed today, he found himself nodding as if her explanation made perfect sense. "It's a foal," he said. "She was trapped by the creek. Someone had tied her there with a cable, and she was pregnant. She just gave birth." Mrs. Blackfeather's weathered face showed no surprise, only a deep concern. "Show me," she said simply. Inside the shed, the scene remained peaceful. Lily sat beside the two foals, her small hand resting on the mother's neck. Both animals were alarmingly still, their sides rising and falling with shallow breaths. Mrs. Blackfeather took in the scene with wise, knowing eyes. "A mini horse," she said, gesturing to the tiny newborn, "and its mother barely more than a foal herself." "A mini horse," Marcus repeated, confused. "But she was out in the wild. We don't have miniature horses running free around here." The old woman knelt beside the pair, her movements slow and deliberate. She examined the mother first, her hands gently probing the young horse's sides and legs. "This is no wild Mustang," she said after a moment. "This is a domestic horse, a yearling. Quarter horse by the look of her. Someone owned her." Marcus frowned, the implications sinking in. The same someone who tied her up and left her to die. Mrs. Blackfeather nodded grimly. The miniature foal is unexpected. Such a breeding would be difficult to achieve naturally. Someone may have been experimenting. The thought turned Marcus's stomach. Someone had deliberately bred this young horse, then abandoned both her and her unborn foal to die a slow, cruel death in the mud. "Will they survive?" he asked, watching as the tiny black foal nuzzled weakly against its mother. Mrs. Blackfeather's expression was grave. "The mother is very weak. The birth has taken much of her strength, and she likely went without food or water for days. The foal is stronger than it should be, given the circumstances, but still at risk." She looked up at Marcus, her dark eyes piercing. "They need a veterinarian, medicine, proper care." "I'll call Dr. Weaver from town," Marcus said, already mentally calculating the cost. His veteran's disability check wouldn't arrive for another week, and his small savings was nearly depleted after replacing the water heater last month. As if reading his thoughts, Mrs. Blackfeather said, "I will help with the cost. These two are special. The spirits have plans for them." Normally, Marcus would have politely declined, proud to a fault about accepting charity. But looking at the two horses and his daughter, who seemed to have formed an instant bond with them, he simply nodded. "Thank you." Mrs. Blackfeather produced a thermos from beneath her poncho. "Warm broth with medicines," she explained. "For the mother. It will help restore her strength until the doctor comes." As Marcus watched, the old woman carefully dribbled small amounts of the broth into the young mother's mouth. To Marcus's surprise, the horse accepted the liquid willingly, seeming to understand it was meant to help her. The miniature foal watched. With curious eyes, its tiny head swiveling between its mother and the humans surrounding them. "She knows you saved her," Mrs. Blackfeather said, noticing Marcus's expression. "Horses never forget those who help them in times of need." Lily had not moved from her position by the mother's head, her small fingers gently stroking the white star on the foal's forehead. There was something in her eyes that Marcus hadn't seen since before Sarah's death. A spark, a connection to the world around her. "Your daughter has the gift," Mrs. Blackfeather observed quietly. "She sees the spirit in all living things." Before Marcus could respond, the sound of another vehicle approaching drew their attention. Through the shed's doorway, he could see headlights cutting through the deepening twilight. "That will be Dr. Weaver," Mrs. Blackfeather said. "I called her before I came." Marcus blinked in surprise. "But how did you know to—" The old woman simply smiled, the wrinkles around her eyes deepening. "The spirits told me, remember?" Dr. Elena Weaver was younger than Marcus had expected, maybe early 30s, with auburn hair, pulled back in a practical ponytail, and sharp, assessing eyes that took in the scene quickly as she entered the shed. "Mrs. Blackfeather," she greeted, the older woman with respectful familiarity before turning to Marcus. "I'm Dr. Weaver. Tell me what happened." As succinctly as possible, Marcus recounted finding the young horse trapped in the mud, the cable around her neck, and the miraculous birth that had followed. Dr. Weaver listened without interruption, her expression growing increasingly troubled. "A yearling giving birth," she said when he had finished. "I've never heard of such a thing." She knelt beside the pair, opening her medical bag. "Let's see what we're dealing with." Her examination was thorough and gentle. She checked the mother's vital signs, examined the raw marks around her neck, assessed her overall condition. Then she turned her attention to the miniature foal, who regarded her with surprisingly alert eyes. "This is definitely a miniature horse," she confirmed, measuring the tiny foal's legs and body. "Not just an undersized quarter horse." And looking at the mother, "I'd guess she's barely a year old, 14, 15 months at most. She shouldn't be capable of reproduction yet." Dr. Weaver frowned. "Someone's been experimenting with hormone treatments, growth acceleration. It's unethical and dangerous." "Will they survive?" Marcus asked, the question that mattered most. Dr. Weaver straightened, considering. The mother is severely malnourished and dehydrated. There's mild infection where the cable cut into her neck, and she's exhausted from both the trapped ordeal and the birth. But she's young and seems to have a strong will to live. She glanced at Lily, who hadn't left the horse's side. Your daughter seems to be a positive influence. And the baby? Mrs. Blackfeather asked. Surprisingly robust, given the circumstances. Miniature horses are hardy by nature, and this one appears to have inherited that trait. Still, both will need intensive care for at least the next week. Marcus ran a hand through his rain-dampened hair. I can't keep them here. I don't have proper stables, supplies. They can come to my clinic, Dr. Weaver interrupted. I have the facilities to care for them until they're stronger. Then decisions can be made about their future. The thought of separation seemed to alarm Lily. She looked up sharply, shaking her head, her hand tightening slightly on the mother's neck. Dr. Weaver noticed. You and your daughter are welcome to visit any time, she added. In fact, I'd encourage it. The young mother seems to trust her, which will help in the recovery process. Lily's shoulders relaxed slightly, but her expression remained solemn, her eyes moving between her father and the horses as if weighing something in her mind. We should move them soon, Dr. Weaver continued, gathering her supplies. I have a trailer attached to my truck. With help, we can carefully transport them to the clinic. The logistics of moving 2 weak injured horses through mud and rain were challenging, but between Marcus's strength, Mrs. Blackfeather's calm guidance, and Dr. Weaver's medical expertise, they managed to create a makeshift stretcher from old boards found in the shed. The young mother was too weak to walk, and the miniature foal was still unsteady on its spindly legs. As they prepared to move the pair, Lily remained close, her eyes never leaving the horses. When it came time to carry them to the trailer, she insisted on walking alongside, one hand gently touching the mother's neck the entire way. The clinic was on the outskirts of Pinecrest, a modern facility that surprised Marcus with its size and equipment. Most of my patients are ranch horses and cattle, Dr. Weaver explained, as they carefully transferred the horses into a clean, straw-bedded stall. But I've treated everything from barn cats to buffalo. Once the mother and foal were settled, Dr. Weaver set up IV fluids for the yearling and prepared a special formula for the miniature foal. They'll need round-the-clock monitoring for the next 48 hours, she said. I'll stay overnight with them. Mrs. Blackfeather nodded approvingly. You're a good healer, she told the vet. The spirits chose well. Rather than dismissing the comment, Dr. Weaver smiled. High praise, coming from you. I learned a lot about herbal treatments from your talks at the community center. It was nearly midnight by the time they finished getting the horses settled. Lily was half asleep on her feet, but still reluctant to leave. She stood by the stall door, one hand reaching through the bars to touch the mother's nose. We need to get home, Lilybug, Marcus said gently. We can come back tomorrow. To his surprise, Lily turned and spoke, her second set of words that day. Promise, she whispered, her voice raspy from disuse. Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion. I promise, he managed. Dr. Weaver, who had been entering notes into a tablet, looked up in surprise. Mrs. Blackfeather merely nodded, as if she had expected nothing less. First thing tomorrow, Marcus continued, kneeling to Lily's level. We'll come right after breakfast. Lily seemed to consider this, then nodded solemnly. She turned back to the horses one last time, placing her palm flat against the stall door. Sleep safe, she whispered, and Marcus wasn't entirely sure whether she was speaking to the horses or if they were somehow communicating back. The drive home was quiet, both father and daughter exhausted from the day's events. Mrs. Blackfeather had returned to her own home, promising to check on the horses in the morning as well. The storm had finally passed, leaving puddles on the roads that reflected the emerging stars above. You spoke today, Marcus said softly as they approached their house. "I'm so proud of you, Lilybug." Lily looked out the window for a long moment, then turned to him. "They needed help," she said simply, as if that explained everything. Perhaps it did. Something had broken through the wall of silence that had surrounded his daughter since Sarah's death. Something about those horses, their vulnerability, their fight for survival, had reached a part of Lily that all the therapy sessions and gentle encouragement hadn't been able to touch. That night, for the first time in months, Lily slept peacefully without the nightmares that usually caused her to cry out in her sleep. Marcus checked on her several times, marveling at the change a single day had brought. As promised, they returned to the clinic early the next morning. Dr. Weaver met them at the entrance, her eyes tired but satisfied. "They made it through the night," she reported. "The mother's vitals are stabilizing and the little one is nursing well." Relief washed over Marcus. He hadn't realized how invested he'd become in these two strange horses until that moment. The stall had been transformed overnight. Fresh straw covered the floor, water and feed buckets had been installed, and various medical equipment surrounded the pair. The young mother was standing now, though shakily, her head hanging lower than was ideal, but better than Marcus had expected. The miniature foal stood beside her, its impossibly delicate legs supporting its tiny frame as it nuzzled against its mother's side. Lily immediately went to the stall door, which Dr. Weaver unlocked for her. Without hesitation, she entered and settled herself on the straw beside the pair. The mother horse nickered softly, lowering her head to gently bump Lily's shoulder in greeting. "Remarkable," Dr. Weaver murmured, watching the interaction. "Usually horses are extremely protective of their foals, especially around strangers, but she seems to recognize your daughter as a friend." "Lily has always had a way with animals," Marcus said, remembering how even as a toddler she could approach the most skittish creatures without frightening them. Sarah had called it her superpower. Dr. Weaver gestured for Marcus to follow her to a small office adjacent to the treatment area, where they could talk while still keeping an eye on Lily and the horses through a window. "I've been making some calls," she said without preamble, "trying to figure out where these horses came from and who might have done this to them." Marcus tensed. "Any leads?" "Nothing concrete yet, but there's a research facility about 60 miles north of here, outside of Cody. Montgomery Agricultural Sciences. They do all sorts of livestock development work, selective breeding, genetic testing, that sort of thing. You think they could be responsible?" Dr. Weaver's expression was carefully neutral. "I don't have any evidence linking them to these particular horses, but about 6 months ago, one of their researchers came into town looking for specialized equipment. Hormone injectors, growth serums, things that raise some eyebrows in our veterinary community." "Have you contacted the authorities?" Marcus asked, thinking of the cruelty involved in abandoning the horses to die. "I've called the county sheriff and reported finding abandoned, abused animals. They'll send someone to take a statement, but," she sighed, "without clear evidence of who did this, there's not much they can pursue." Marcus glanced back at the horses and Lily. The little girl was now gently stroking the miniature foal, who had approached her with curious trust. "What will happen to them?" he asked quietly. "Once they're stable enough, they'll need a permanent home, someplace where they can be properly cared for. The mother will need ongoing medical attention. What was done to her body has likely created long-term health issues, and the miniature foal is a special case. It may have inherited genetic modifications we don't yet understand." Marcus nodded, a thought forming that both excited and terrified him. "And if someone wanted to adopt them, what would that involve?" Dr. Weaver studied him for a moment. "Are you thinking of taking them in?" "Maybe," Marcus admitted. "I don't have proper facilities yet, but I've got 10 acres. I could build something suitable. Lily—" He paused, watching his daughter interact with the horses. "Lily needs them. And I think they need her, too. A small smile curved Dr. Weaver's lips. I think that could be arranged once they're medically cleared, and I'd be happy to provide guidance on their care. Before Marcus could respond, the clinic's front door opened, and a man in a sheriff's uniform entered. Dr. Weaver excused herself to greet him. "Deputy Collins," she said. "Thank you for coming so quickly." The deputy was a tall, serious-looking man with a weathered face that suggested years of outdoor work. "Dr. Weaver," he acknowledged with a nod, "I understand you found some abandoned horses." As Dr. Weaver led the deputy toward the stall area, explaining the situation, Marcus felt a strange unease creep over him. Something about the deputy's manner seemed off, his eyes too sharp, his questions too specific about the horse's conditions and markings. Through the window, Marcus watched as the deputy approached the stall where Lily sat with the horses. The young mother's reaction was immediate and alarming. Her head shot up, ears pinned back in obvious fear, her body positioning itself protectively between the deputy and her foal. Even from a distance, Marcus could hear her distressed whinny. Lily looked up, her expression changing from contentment to concern as she sensed the horse's fear. She glanced between the deputy and the agitated mother, then rose slowly to her feet, placing herself deliberately in front of the miniature foal. Marcus moved quickly, rejoining the group by the stall. "Is everything okay?" Dr. Weaver looked troubled. "The mother seems upset by Deputy Collins's presence." The deputy's face was impassive, but Marcus noticed his hand drift subtly toward his service weapon. "Animals can be unpredictable," he said, flatly, "especially when they've been traumatized." Something in his tone raised alarm bells in Marcus's mind. This didn't feel right. The mother horse was now trembling visibly, her eyes fixed on the deputy with unmistakable terror. "She recognizes you," Marcus said suddenly, the realization hitting him like a physical blow. "She's afraid of you." The deputy's eyes narrowed slightly. "That's ridiculous. I've never seen these horses before in my life." But his denial lacked conviction, and Marcus noticed a slight twitch in his jaw, a tell he'd learned to recognize in men who were lying during his military interrogation training. Dr. Weaver had noticed the horse's reaction too. "Perhaps we should continue this discussion in my office, away from the animals," she suggested carefully. "Actually," the deputy said, checking his watch with exaggerated casualness, "I need to get back to the station. I've got enough for my report. Abandoned horses, unknown owner, suspected abuse. I'll file it when I get back." "Don't you want to take photos for evidence?" Dr. Weaver asked, her tone professional but her expression suspicious. "Not necessary. Your statement is sufficient." The deputy was already backing toward the exit. "I'll be in touch if we develop any leads." As soon as the door closed behind him, Dr. Weaver turned to Marcus. "That was wrong," Marcus finished for her. "He wasn't here to investigate. He was here to confirm what had been found." He looked back at the horses, the mother still trembling, Lily now comforting her with gentle strokes along her neck. "He's involved somehow." "I'm calling Sheriff Tanner directly," Dr. Weaver said, pulling out her phone. "Collins is only a deputy. The sheriff should know what's happening." While she made the call, Marcus returned to the stall, entering slowly so as not to further upset the horses. Lily looked up at him, her eyes wide with concern. "Bad man," she said softly. Marcus nodded, kneeling beside her. "I think so, honey. But he's gone now." The young mother was still agitated, her sides heaving with quick, shallow breaths. The miniature foal pressed against her legs, sensing its mother's distress. "It's okay," Lily whispered to them both. "We won't let him take you." The simple promise from his 4-year-old daughter strengthened Marcus's resolve. Whatever was happening here, whatever had been done to these horses, was wrong, and whoever was responsible was powerful enough to have law enforcement involved in the cover-up. Dr. Weaver returned, her expression grim. Sheriff Tanner says Collins called in sick. Today, he's not on duty. The implications were clear. The man who had just left wasn't acting in an official capacity. He might not even be a real deputy. We need to move them, Marcus said immediately. If he reports back to whoever sent him, they'll know the horses are here. Dr. Weaver nodded. I agree. But they're not strong enough for a long journey, and I don't have any other facilities remote enough to hide them. Marcus thought quickly. Mrs. Blackfeather, her place is isolated, hard to find if you don't know the back roads, and she has an old barn that could be secured. It could work, Dr. Weaver agreed. I can bring my equipment there to continue their treatment, but we need to move fast. Within an hour, they had loaded the horses into Dr. Weaver's trailer, taking care to make the mother as comfortable as possible for the journey. Lily refused to be separated from them, so Marcus lifted her into the trailer, where she sat on a bale of straw between the mother and the side wall. The drive to Mrs. Blackfeather's property took longer than usual, as Dr. Weaver kept the trailer at a slow pace to minimize stress on the fragile horses. Marcus followed in his truck, constantly checking his rearview mirror for any sign of pursuit. The fake deputy's appearance had triggered his combat vigilance, dormant since Afghanistan, but now humming through his nervous system with familiar intensity. Mrs. Blackfeather was waiting for them, standing in the yard of her modest home, as if she'd known exactly when they would arrive. The property sat nestled against a backdrop of pine trees, with the small weathered barn visible just beyond a stand of aspens, whose leaves trembled in the light breeze. The spirits warned me, she said as Marcus approached. Men with darkness. In their hearts are searching. Under normal circumstances, Marcus might have dismissed such talk, but after what he had witnessed in the clinic, he simply nodded. We need to hide the horses. A man came, pretending to be a deputy. He scared them badly. The barn is prepared, Mrs. Blackfeather replied, gesturing toward the structure. It is old but solid, and it has protections the darkness cannot easily penetrate. Dr. Weaver backed the trailer as close to the barn as possible, the tires leaving deep tracks in the soft ground. Together, they carefully unloaded the mother horse, who was still weak but determined to stay on her feet. The miniature foal followed closely, its tiny hooves barely making impressions in the mud. Lily walked between them, one hand on the mother's side, guiding her toward the safety of the barn. Inside, Marcus was surprised to find the old structure had been transformed. Fresh straw covered the floor of a large stall. Water buckets had been filled, and bundles of sweet-smelling hay were stacked nearby. Herbs hung from the rafters, filling the air with an earthy fragrance that somehow made the space feel secure and welcoming. You've been busy, he remarked to Mrs. Blackfeather. The elderly woman smiled. The spirits do not waste time with warnings. If they speak of danger, it is already approaching. Dr. Weaver set up her medical equipment in a corner of the stall, immediately checking the mother's vital signs after the journey. Her pulse is elevated, but that's to be expected after the stress at the clinic and the move. Otherwise, she's holding stable. The miniature foal seemed less affected by the journey, exploring the stall with curious interest, occasionally returning to its mother's side for reassurance. Its movements were becoming more coordinated by the hour, its strength visibly increasing. Despite its traumatic entry into the world, what shall we name them? Mrs. Blackfeather asked, surprising them all with the practical question. All beings deserve names. Names have power. Lily, who had been quiet since they'd left the clinic, looked up. Hope, she said clearly, pointing to the mother horse, and Star. She indicated the miniature foal with its distinctive white marking. Marcus felt a surge of emotion at hearing his daughter speak so clearly, choosing such meaningful names. Hope and Star, he repeated. Perfect. Hope seemed to approve of her name, her ears pricking forward at the sound. Star continued his exploration of the stall, his tiny hooves making soft thumping sounds on the straw-covered floor. "I need to return to the clinic briefly," Dr. Weaver said, packing some of her equipment, "to maintain the appearance of normal operations and to gather more supplies. Will you stay with them?" Marcus nodded. "We're not going anywhere." After Dr. Weaver left, Mrs. Blackfeather brought food for them. Simple sandwiches and a thermos of hot tea that tasted of mint and something. Sweeter Marcus couldn't identify. They ate sitting on bales of hay, watching Hope and Star settle into their new surroundings. "The little one is special," Mrs. Blackfeather observed, watching Star approach Lily without hesitation, allowing the child to stroke his sleek black coat. "He carries old wisdom in young eyes." Marcus had noticed it too, a quality of awareness. In the miniature foal that seemed beyond normal animal intelligence, Star moved with purpose, his gaze alert and assessing. When Lily spoke to him, he tilted his head as if understanding every word. "Do you think they were experimenting on them?" Marcus asked quietly, not wanting Lily to overhear. "The people who did this?" Mrs. Blackfeather's expression grew solemn. "Man's desire to control nature never ends well. They seek power without understanding balance. These horses carry something their captors did not expect, a connection to the old ways, the spirit paths that existed before man tried to bend all things to his will." Though her words were cryptic, they resonated with Marcus. There was something beyond ordinary about these horses, particularly the tiny foal, whose birth defied biological possibility. He found himself wondering what other impossibilities might yet be revealed. As afternoon faded into evening, Dr. Weaver returned with additional supplies and troubling news. "Two men came to the clinic after you left," she told Marcus in a low voice, drawing him outside the barn where Lily couldn't hear. "They had identification from Montgomery Agricultural Sciences, claiming they were tracking stolen research specimens on two horses that had escaped during transport." Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the evening air. "What did you tell them?" "That I'd treated two abandoned horses found in poor condition, but they'd been claimed by owners and taken home. I gave them a false description and pointed them toward the next county." She ran a hand through her hair, a gesture of stress. "They didn't believe me. They insisted on searching the clinic, and when they found nothing, they started asking about you and your daughter." "Me? How would they know about us? The fake deputy must have reported back. They knew exactly what the horses looked like, right down to the star marking on both their foreheads. They said the horses were part of a classified genetic research program and needed to be recovered immediately for public safety reasons." Marcus tensed. Public safety? What does that even mean? "I don't know, but they made it sound ominous. They had papers, government authorization forms that looked legitimate. They said the mother horse had been treated with experimental compounds that could be dangerous if she wasn't properly contained and monitored." "That's a convenient way to justify hunting her down," Marcus said bitterly. "Do you believe them?" "Doctor," Weaver hesitated, "I believe they've been experimenting with something beyond normal breeding techniques. The timing of Hope's pregnancy, Star's impossible existence, none of it follows natural biological patterns. But dangerous? The only danger I have seen is to the horses themselves." They were interrupted by Mrs. Blackfeather, who approached silently from the barn doorway. "Your daughter is showing us something you need to see," she said, her voice urgent, but controlled. Inside the barn, they found Lily sitting cross-legged on the straw, Star standing directly in front of her, their faces inches apart. Hope watched from nearby, her posture alert but calm. As they entered, both Lily and Star turned to look at them with eerily synchronized movements. "Watch," Lily said simply, placing her small palm against Star's forehead, directly on the white star marking that matched his mother's. For a moment nothing seemed to happen. Then Marcus noticed a subtle change in the air around them, a faint shimmer like heat rising from pavement on a hot day. The shimmer intensified, concentrating around Star and Lily, pulsing with a gentle rhythm that somehow matched the beating of his own heart. And then, impossibly, Star began to glow. It started as a faint luminescence outlining his tiny body, then grew stronger until he seemed surrounded by a soft blue-white light. The glow extended to Lily's hand, where it touched his forehead, spreading up her arm like gentle flames that gave off light but no heat. "My God," Dr. Weaver whispered, unconsciously stepping backward. "What is that?" "The spirit light," Mrs. Blackfeather said calmly, as if witnessing a miracle was an everyday occurrence. "The connection between worlds." As they watched in stunned silence, the light surrounding Star and Lily coalesced into moving images, ghostly projections floating in the air around them. Marcus recognized terrain from his own property, the creek where they had found hope. But the perspective was strange, as if seen through different eyes, sharper in some ways, with colors he couldn't quite name. "Are those memories?" Dr. Weaver asked, her scientific mind struggling to categorize what she was witnessing. "She's showing us what happened," Marcus realized aloud. "Through Star, somehow." The images shifted, revealing men in dark clothing dragging a struggling Hope across rocky ground. The perspective changed again. Now they could see a facility with sterile rooms, equipment, other horses in stalls. The images moved faster, becoming fragmented. Needles, restraints, a surgical suite. Hope, growing rounder with pregnancy. Far too quickly, her eyes dulled with drugs and fear. Then escape. Hope somehow breaking free during transport, running despite her awkward pregnant body, pursued by men with tranquilizer guns. The creek, the mud, the desperate attempt to hide, followed by the cruel decision to restrain her with the cable and leave her to die when recapture proved too difficult. Throughout the ghostly display, Star remained eerily still, only his eyes moving, reflecting the blue-white light that emanated from his body. Lily, too, was motionless, except for her steady breathing, her expression one of deep concentration. Gradually, the images faded. The glow receded, withdrawing first from Lily's arm, then from Star's small body, until only a faint shimmer remained around the white marking on his forehead. Lily blinked several times, then lowered her hand, looking exhausted but somehow peaceful. "They hurt her," she said softly. "They made her different." But she got away. The adults remained frozen, trying to process what they had witnessed. "Doctor." Weaver was the first to find her voice. "That's not possible," she said weakly. "What we just saw is beyond your science," Mrs. Blackfeather finished for her, "but not beyond the old knowledge. The foal carries the seeing gift, the ability to share truth across the boundaries that separate minds. Telepathy? Some kind of projection." Dr. Weaver shook her head, struggling with concepts that challenged her medical training. "They must have done something to Star's brain development, some kind of modification that allows for visual projection. Or perhaps," Mrs. Blackfeather suggested gently, "they accidentally awakened something that sleeps in most creatures. Something the old ones knew well." Marcus moved to Lily's side, kneeling beside her. "Are you okay, Lilybug?" His daughter nodded, leaning against him tiredly. "Star showed me everything. They made him special. They didn't mean to, but they did. Special how, honey? He can see things, not just with his eyes. He can see inside people, what they're thinking, what they're going to do." She patted the miniature foal's neck affectionately. "And he can show me." The implications were staggering. If what Lily said was true, if what they had just witnessed was real, then Star possessed abilities that went far beyond normal animal intelligence. No wonder Montgomery Agricultural Sciences was desperate to reclaim them. Such abilities would be invaluable for military applications, espionage, countless other uses where seeing others' thoughts would provide a critical advantage. "We have to protect them," Marcus said, resolution hardening his voice. "If those people get their hands on them again—" "They won't stop looking," Dr. Weaver warned. "Not if Star can do what we just saw. They'll bring more resources, maybe Official government support. Then we need to disappear, Marcus decided, all of us, somewhere they can't find us. The words came easily, but the reality was daunting. Disappearing meant abandoning his home, his meager security, everything he had built for himself and Lily since returning from Afghanistan. And yet, looking at his daughter's face, at the bond she had formed with these extraordinary horses, he knew it was the only choice. Mrs. Blackfeather seemed to read his thoughts. I have family on the Shoshone Reservation near Wind River, many acres, protected status, a place where outsiders cannot easily enter without permission. Would they take us in? Marcus asked. A stranger, his daughter, and 2 horses that might bring danger. Family is family, the elderly woman said simply. And the horses carry old medicine. The elders will understand their importance once they see what we have seen. Dr. Weaver looked troubled. They might have medical needs, I can't predict. Hope's body has been altered in ways we don't fully understand, and Star... She gestured helplessly at the tiny foal who was now nuzzling Lily's hand. Star defies everything. I know about equine biology. You could come with us, Lily suggested suddenly, looking up at the veterinarian. You help them. The directness of the child's invitation seemed to catch Dr. Weaver off guard. She hesitated, clearly torn between professional caution and genuine concern for the horses, and perhaps for Lily as well, whose emerging voice seemed so closely tied to their presence. I have a practice here, she began. Responsibilities. They will come back, Mrs. Blackfeather interrupted. The men from the laboratory. They will ask more questions, demand more answers. They will not believe your stories forever. Eventually, they will threaten. Dr. Weaver paled slightly, recognizing the truth in the older woman's words. I have a colleague who can cover my practice temporarily. I could say it's a family emergency. Then it's settled, Marcus said, feeling both relief and apprehension. How soon can we leave? First light would be safest, Mrs. Blackfeather advised. The roads to Wind River are difficult to follow in darkness. I'll need tonight to arrange coverage for my practice and pack essential supplies, Dr. Weaver added. Medical equipment, medications for the horses. Marcus nodded, already mentally calculating what they would need from his own home. I'll go back for our things once it's fully dark. Lily can stay here with the horses. As they discussed logistics, Marcus noticed Star watching them intently, his intelligent eyes moving from speaker to speaker as if following the conversation perfectly. The miniature foal's ears were perked forward, his posture alert despite the exhaustion he must feel after projecting those vivid images. Understanding him, Marcus realized with sudden clarity. He understands every word we're saying. As if confirming this thought, Star turned his gaze directly to Marcus and gently inclined his head in what could only be described as a deliberate nod. Lily, Marcus said quietly, can Star understand us? When we talk, his daughter looked at him with surprise, as if the question was so obvious it hardly warranted asking. Of course, Daddy. He's smart. Smarter than people sometimes. Marcus exchanged glances with Dr. Weaver, whose scientific skepticism was visibly warring with what they had witnessed. And can he communicate with you when you're not touching him? Lily considered this, then shook her head. He has to show me. But he can hear... She tapped her temple. In here. What people are thinking. The enormity of what his daughter was describing. What they had all witnessed, settled over Marcus like a physical weight. If Star could perceive thoughts, could project memories and images, what else might he be capable of? What had those researchers been trying to create, and had they succeeded beyond their expectations or failed in ways they never anticipated? We should rest while we can, Mrs. Blackfeather suggested, breaking the heavy silence. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges. As Dr. Weaver left to make her preparations and Mrs. Blackfeather went to arrange bedding for them in the house, Marcus found himself alone with Lily and the horses. Hope had settled into the fresh straw, her body still weak, but her eyes more alert than before. Star stood protectively near his mother, occasionally nuzzling her neck or stamping one tiny hoof, as if impatient with her slow recovery. "You saved them," Lily said suddenly, looking up at her father, "like you save people in the war." The simple observation caught Marcus off guard. He had rarely spoken to Lily about his military service, especially the combat aspects. Sarah had been the one to explain to their daughter that Daddy helped people who were in danger, a sanitized version of his actual experiences. "Not always," he said softly, old guilt rising to the surface. "I couldn't save everyone. But you tried." Lily's gaze was direct, uncomfortably perceptive. "Like with Mommy, you tried." The mention of Sarah sent a familiar pang through Marcus's chest. "Yes, Lilybug, I tried with Mommy." Star says trying matters, even when it doesn't work. She patted the miniature foal's neck affectionately. "He says Mommy is proud of us." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. He knelt beside his daughter, searching her face. "Star told you that? About Mommy?" Lily nodded solemnly. "He can see her sometimes. Not like us, but different. He says she's like light now." A lump formed in Marcus's throat. He wasn't a particularly religious man. War had complicated his relationship with faith, but the idea that Sarah might somehow still exist, might still watch over their daughter, touched something deep within him. "Is he saying things to you right now?" he asked carefully. Lily shook her head. "Only when I touch the star." She pointed to the white marking on the foal's forehead. "That's where the pictures come from." Marcus glanced at Star, who was watching them with those unnervingly intelligent eyes. The miniature foal stepped forward, deliberately positioning himself so that his forehead was within Lily's reach. An invitation. "He wants to show you something," Lily explained, reaching out to place her small palm against Star's marking. "It's okay, Daddy. It doesn't hurt." Hesitantly, Marcus extended his hand. Lily took it and guided it until his fingers touched the soft hair of the white star on the foal's forehead. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a warm, tingling sensation spread up his arm, and the air around them began to shimmer with that now familiar blue-white light. Unlike the earlier images of labs and escape, what Marcus saw now was intensely personal. Sarah, his Sarah, sitting in the hospital bed during her final days, sunlight streaming through the window to illuminate her too thin face. But instead of the pain and fear he remembered, her expression was peaceful, her eyes clear. Beside her bed stood a figure that took Marcus a moment to recognize as himself, holding a sleeping Lily. The perspective shifted, viewing the scene from above, as if floating near the ceiling. The hospital room faded, replaced by a different vision. Sarah kneeling beside Lily as the child played with toy horses in their living room. Then another, Sarah watching over them as Marcus tucked Lily into bed, her presence unnoticed by both father and daughter, her expression one of loving protection. The images faded, the glow receding until only the normal evening light of the barn surrounded them. Marcus realized his cheeks were wet with tears. "See?" Lily said simply. "She's still helping us." Marcus struggled to find his voice. "Lily, how can Star know these things? He never met your mother." "He says some things are always there, if you know how to look." She stroked the foal's sleek neck. "He's special that way." "Yes," Marcus agreed, still shaken by what he had witnessed. "He certainly is." Later that night, after Lily had fallen asleep in the small bedroom Mrs. Blackfeather had prepared, Marcus returned to the barn. He needed time to process what had happened, to decide if he had actually experienced something supernatural, or if his grief-stricken mind had somehow fabricated the visions. Hope was resting comfortably, her breathing steady and strong. Star stood alert beside his mother, ears forward as Marcus entered. "I don't know what you are," Marcus said quietly to the foal. "I don't know if what I saw was real or just what I needed to see. But either way, thank you for helping my daughter find her voice again." Star approached him without hesitation, his tiny hooves making almost no sound on the straw-covered floor. The miniature foal stood before Marcus, waiting expectantly. After a moment's hesitation, Marcus knelt and placed his hand on the white star marking. The connection was immediate this time, the blue-white glow enveloping them both. But instead of images of the past, Marcus saw something different, flashes of what could only be the future. A winding mountain road, a checkpoint with armed guards, vehicles in pursuit, men with night vision equipment searching a forest, and finally a vast landscape of rugged beauty, the Wind River Reservation, he assumed, where horses ran free under an endless sky. When the visions faded, Marcus understood. Star wasn't just showing him memories, he was showing him the journey ahead, the dangers they would face, and their ultimate destination. Whether warning or reassurance, the message was clear. Their path would not be easy, but there was hope. "At the end, you're trying to help us," Marcus said softly, "to prepare us." Star nickered softly, pressing his velvety muzzle against Marcus's hand in what felt like confirmation. "I'll do whatever it takes to keep you all safe," Marcus promised, the soldier in him responding to this strange intelligence with the same loyalty he had shown his comrades in arms. "You have my word." The miniature foal stepped back, seeming satisfied. He returned to his mother's side, settling down beside her with the graceful economy of movement that belied his youth. Marcus left the barn deep in thought. The rational part of him, the part trained in combat assessment and threat analysis, was struggling to reconcile what he had experienced with his understanding of reality. But another part, perhaps the part that had always sensed there was more to the world than what could be explained by logic alone, accepted what he had seen. Back at the house, he found Mrs. Blackfeather sitting at her kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug of steaming tea. Without asking, she poured a second cup and pushed it toward him as he sat down. "You've seen," she said. It wasn't a question. Marcus nodded, gratefully accepting the tea. "I've seen something. I'm not sure what to call it." The old ones had many names for such gifts: the seeing path, the spirit road, the bridge between worlds. She took a sip of her tea. "What matters is not what we call it, but that we recognize it when it appears. Do you believe the scientists created this ability in Star, or did they just unlock something that was already there?" Mrs. Blackfeather considered the question. "Perhaps both. The white man's science can manipulate the building blocks of life, yes, but some doors, once opened, reveal paths that have always existed, waiting to be discovered. And hope. Does she share these abilities? The mother's gift is different. She carries the life force that made Star possible. Her body was changed, used as a vessel for something beyond normal creation." Mrs. Blackfeather's expression darkened. It was wrong, what they did to her. Sacred things should not be bent to human will through force and pain. Marcus couldn't disagree. Whatever the scientific achievements represented by Hope and Star, they had been bought with cruelty and suffering that no ethical person could justify. Will the people at Wind River understand about Star and his abilities? Some will. Mrs. Blackfeather nodded. The elders remember the old stories of spirit animals who could bridge the gap between worlds. They will see Star for what he is. Not an experiment to be studied or exploited, but a messenger to be respected. The conversation was interrupted by the sound of a vehicle approaching. Marcus tensed, moving instinctively toward the window, positioning himself to see without being seen, a combat habit that had never fully faded. "It's the doctor," Mrs. Blackfeather said calmly, having not even looked outside. "She has made her preparations. Sure enough, Dr. Weaver's truck pulled into the yard, headlights briefly illuminating the weathered exterior of the house before she cut the engine. She emerged carrying several bags and a medical case, her expression determined despite the late hour. Marcus opened the door before she could knock. "Any problems in town?" "Nothing obvious," she replied, stepping inside. "But there was an unmarked SUV parked near my clinic when I left. Dark windows, government plates. They're watching, not acting. At least not yet." Mrs. Blackfeather gestured for the veterinarian to sit. "They are gathering their forces. Tomorrow, they will move with more purpose." "I've brought everything I could think of," Dr. Weaver said, setting down her bags. "Medications, portable monitoring equipment, basic surgical supplies just in case. And I've arranged for my associate to cover the clinic for a family emergency. She'll arrive tomorrow afternoon, by which time we should be well on our way." "What about your own life?" Marcus asked. "Your practice? Are you sure about this?" Dr. Weaver's expression was resolute. "I took an oath to protect animals from suffering. What's been done to Hope and Star? It violates everything I believe in as a veterinarian. Besides," she added with a small smile, "I've never been to Wind River. Could be an educational experience." Her attempt at lightness couldn't quite mask the seriousness of the situation, but Marcus appreciated it nonetheless. "We'll leave at first light then. I still need to go back to my place for our things." "Is that wise?" Dr. Weaver asked. "If they're looking for you, they'll be watching your clinic more than my remote property," Marcus reasoned. "And I need to get Lily's medications, some clothes, a few essential items. I won't be long." Mrs. Blackfeather rose from the table. "Take the old logging road behind my property. It connects to your land from the west side, less visible than the main road." Marcus nodded, grateful for the suggestion. "I'll go now while it's still dark. Should be back before dawn." The drive to his property via the logging road took longer than the direct route would have, but the overgrown track provided excellent cover. Marcus kept his headlights off when possible, navigating by moonlight and his familiarity with the terrain. When he finally reached his land, he approached with caution, parking his truck behind a stand of trees rather than in its usual spot beside the house. The ranch house stood dark and silent, looking oddly abandoned after less than a day's absence. Marcus circled it carefully, checking for signs of intrusion or surveillance. Finding none, he slipped inside through the back door, moving with the silent efficiency that had served him well in combat. Working quickly, he packed essentials into 2 duffel bags, clothes for himself and Lily, her teddy bear and favorite book, her medications and his own, a few treasured photos of Sarah, basic survival gear. In the kitchen, he gathered non-perishable food. From a locked cabinet in his bedroom, he retrieved his service pistol and ammunition. He hadn't fired the weapon since returning from Afghanistan, but tonight he felt better having it secured at his hip. As he was about to leave, something made him pause in Lily's room. Her collection of toy horses stood arranged in a perfect line. On her dresser, a habit she had developed during her silent months. On impulse, Marcus swept them into the bag. Whatever lay ahead, having these small comforts might help Lily cope with the upheaval. He was halfway back to his truck when heightened awareness prickled at the back of his neck. The combat instinct that had saved his life more than once. Marcus froze, scanning the darkness around the property. There, a flash of movement by the driveway. And there, the glint of moonlight on something metallic near the barn. Not wildlife. People, moving with the deliberate stealth of those, trying to establish a perimeter. Marcus retreated silently toward the cover of trees, keeping his profile low. They hadn't spotted him yet, but they were closing in on the house. 3, maybe 4 figures wearing dark clothing, military or paramilitary by their movement patterns. How had they found his place so quickly? The fake deputy must have reported. Back perhaps had the resources to run his plates or identify him through local records. Montgomery Agricultural Sciences clearly had connections beyond a normal research facility. Using the trees for cover, Marcus circled back toward where he had parked his truck. He needed to warn the others, to get back to Mrs. Blackfeather's before these people somehow traced the connection. He had almost reached his vehicle when a voice called out from the darkness, calm and controlled. "Sergeant Reed, we know you're there. We just want to talk." Marcus froze. The use of his military rank was deliberate, a signal that they knew exactly who he was, perhaps even details of his service record. "You found something that belongs to us," the voice continued. "Something valuable and potentially dangerous. We're not here to cause trouble for you or your daughter. We just need our property returned." The mention of Lily sent a surge of protective anger through Marcus. He remained silent, using the voice to triangulate the speaker's position while scanning for others. "The young horse and its foal are part of a classified research program," the man went on. "They've been modified in ways you don't understand. The foal, in particular, represents a significant investment and potential risk. If you're experiencing unusual phenomena around them, visions, telepathic episodes, those are side effects of their modifications. They're not supernatural. They're scientific developments with national security implications." The clinical description of Star's abilities confirmed Marcus's suspicions. These people knew exactly what the horses could do. They had created those abilities, and now they wanted to reclaim their investment. "We can offer you compensation," the voice added, "a substantial amount, enough to rebuild your life somewhere better than this. All we ask is that you tell us where the horses are now." Marcus remained silent, his mind racing. The speaker was trying to keep him engaged, which meant others were likely moving to flank his position. He needed to leave now. Staying low, he moved to his truck, grateful he had left the keys in the ignition for a quick departure. As he silently opened the door, he heard a noise behind him, the soft crunch of boots on pine needles. Marcus spun, dropping the bags and reaching for his pistol in one fluid motion. Before he could draw the weapon, a voice from just behind his right shoulder spoke. "I wouldn't, Sergeant." A figure emerged from the shadows, weapon already trained on Marcus, a compact submachine gun with a suppressor attached. Not standard law enforcement, something more covert. "Like my colleague said, we just want to talk." The man gestured. "With his weapon. Hands where I can see them, please." Marcus slowly raised his hands, mind calculating options. The operator before him was professional, stance balanced, weapon grip steady, eyes constantly scanning for threats while maintaining focus on his target. Military training, possibly special operations background. "There's a misunderstanding." "Here," Marcus said calmly. "I don't have what you're looking for. The pregnant yearling and her miniature foal." The man's tone was matter-of-fact. "Found half buried by a creek on your property. You and your daughter dug them out, took them to Weaver's veterinary clinic, then moved them when our associate came asking questions." A thin smile appeared. "We're thorough, Sergeant. It's what we're paid for." The first speaker emerged from the darkness, an older man with silver-grey hair and the bearing of someone accustomed to authority. He wore casual clothing rather than tactical gear, but Marcus recognized the type, an administrator, someone who directed operations rather than executed them. "Dr. Lawrence Porter," the man introduced himself. "I oversee the Montgomery Advanced Evolutionary Program. The horses you found are the culmination of 15 years of research and countless millions in funding. They represent a breakthrough in interspecies cognitive enhancement that has applications far beyond what you can imagine. Applications like reading thoughts, projecting visions." Marcus kept his tone conversational, buying time to assess his surroundings. There were at least 4 operators positioned around him, all armed, all watching with professional detachment. Porter's eyebrows rose slightly. "So you have witnessed the projection capabilities. Fascinating. The yearling shouldn't have been." able to deliver a viable foal at all. Her reproductive system was still immature when she escaped. The fact that the miniature survived birth, let alone demonstrates the enhanced cognitive abilities, that's valuable data. Data, Marcus repeated, disgust evident in his voice. Is that all they are to you? The pain you caused, the suffering, are just data points. Progress requires sacrifice, Sergeant. You of all people should understand that concept. Porter's expression hardened. Now where are the horses? The sooner we recover them, the sooner you and your daughter can return to your lives. Marcus knew he was in an impossible tactical situation, outnumbered, outgunned, with no clear avenue of escape. But he also knew he couldn't betray Hope and Star, couldn't condemn them to return to the sterile horror of Porter's laboratories. They died, he lied flatly. The mother was too weak after giving birth. The foal followed hours later. Dr. Weaver tried to save them, but it was too late. Whatever you did to them made survival impossible. Porter studied his face, clearly searching for signs of deception. That's disappointing to hear. Where are the remains? We'll need to recover them for analysis. Buried. The vet didn't want to risk contamination. Said whatever genetic modifications you made could potentially spread to other animals. A flash of irritation crossed Porter's features. That's scientifically absurd. Our modifications aren't contagious. They're precision alterations to specific genetic sequences. He sighed. You're lying, Sergeant Reed. Rather poorly, I might add. Your military record indicates much better performance under pressure. Marcus maintained his neutral expression, though inwardly he was calculating his next move. Porter and his team clearly weren't leaving without what they came for. Search his truck, Porter instructed one of the operators. Maybe we'll find some clue as to where he's really taken our assets. As the man moved toward the vehicle, a distant sound caught everyone's attention, the low rumble of approaching engines. Porter's head tilted slightly, listening. Expecting company, Sergeant? Marcus was not, and his genuine confusion must have shown on his face. Porter gestured to two of his men, who melted into the darkness to investigate. Regardless of who that is, Porter continued, our conversation isn't finished. If the horses truly died, then you'll have no objection to taking us to their burial site. And if, as I suspect, they're alive somewhere, you're going to lead us to them. The rumbling grew louder, multiple vehicles approaching fast. Too fast for casual travel on the rural roads, especially at night. Porter's radio crackled to life. Sir, we've got multiple tribal police vehicles approaching from the East Access Road. At least 3 units, lights off, moving with purpose. A flicker of annoyance crossed Porter's face. Tribal police have no jurisdiction here. This is county. Land. They're not slowing down, sir. ETA less than 2 minutes. Porter fixed Marcus with a hard stare. Did you somehow alert the reservation authorities? Interesting choice. In truth, Marcus was as surprised as Porter appeared to be. The Wind River Tribal Police had no reason to be approaching his property, especially at this hour. Unless... The realization hit him with sudden clarity. Star. The foal had somehow sensed the danger, projected it to Lily, who must have alerted Mrs. Blackfeather. The elder's connections to the reservation had mobilized a response faster than should have been possible. Fall back to secondary positions, Porter ordered into his radio. Maintain visual, but do not engage tribal officers. We don't need that complication. To Marcus he added, This isn't over, Sergeant, not by a long shot. The operator covering, Marcus began backing away, weapons still trained on him, but clearly preparing to withdraw. Porter gave him one final, measuring look. Think carefully about your next move. Those horses represent technology with national security implications. Interfering with their recovery could be considered an act against state interests. The threat was clear in his voice, And unlike your military superiors in Afghanistan, I don't leave valuable assets behind enemy lines." With that parting shot, one that cut too close to Marcus's wartime experiences, Porter disappeared into the shadows. Within seconds, all evidence of their presence had vanished, just as the first tribal police vehicle came into view around the bend in the driveway. Marcus stood motionless, heart pounding from the encounter. Porter's organization clearly had intelligence capabilities, paramilitary resources, and a determination that wouldn't be easily discouraged. And they knew far too much about him already. The tribal police vehicle stopped a few yards away, and a tall, broad-shouldered man in a tan uniform stepped out. His angular features and obsidian eyes marked him as Native American, his bearing unmistakably that of law enforcement. "Marcus Reed," he called, one hand resting near his holstered sidearm. "That's me," Marcus confirmed, slowly lowering his hands now that Porter's team had withdrawn. "Chief Ben Redfeather, Wind River Tribal Police. My aunt asked me to provide you with an escort to the reservation." A hint of a smile crossed his otherwise serious face. "She can be very persuasive when she puts her mind to something." "Your aunt?" "Eliza Blackfeather." The police chief gestured toward the other vehicles that had now arrived, forming a protective semicircle around the property. "She said you and your daughter have found something special, something that needs protection." Relief flooded through Marcus. Yes, we have." Chief Redfeather nodded toward Marcus's duffel bags on the ground. "You should get those. We don't have much time. The men who were just here will regroup and return with reinforcements." "You saw them?" Marcus asked, surprised. "We monitored their communication frequencies. They're using military-grade encryption, but our technical specialist recognized the pattern from his time in Army intelligence." Redfeather's expression was grim. "Whoever they are, they have resources beyond normal civilian operations." Marcus quickly loaded his bags into his truck. "I need to get back to your aunt's place. My daughter is there, along with the assets these people are looking for. We'll escort you. 2 units in front, 1 behind. My officers will ensure no one follows." Redfeather returned to his vehicle, adding over his shoulder, "And Mr. Reed, whatever you found that has these people so interested, I hope it's worth the storm that's coming." The journey back to Mrs. Blackfeather's property was tense, but uneventful. The tribal police escort moved with coordinated precision, changing formation periodically to prevent potential ambush points. Marcus followed closely, watching his mirrors for any sign of pursuit, but Porter's team seemed to have temporarily withdrawn to reassess. At the property, Marcus found Dr. Weaver's truck packed and ready to depart, with Mrs. Blackfeather and Lily waiting on the porch. His daughter ran to him as soon as he stepped from his vehicle. "Daddy!" "Star showed me the bad men at our house." Her voice was urgent, her small face pinched with worry. "He made the pictures in my head, and Mrs. Blackfeather called her nephew." Marcus hugged her tightly. "You did exactly the right thing, Lilybug." Over her head, he met Mrs. Blackfeather's knowing gaze and mouthed a silent, "Thank you." Chief Redfeather approached, his expression softening slightly at the sight of Lily. "Aunt Eliza has explained some of the situation. These horses you rescued, they have unusual abilities." "You wouldn't believe me if I told you," Marcus began. "Try me." Redfeather's tone was dry. "Our people have stories about animals with spirit connections that go back generations. Not much surprises me anymore." Before Marcus could respond, Lily tugged at his sleeve. "Star wants to show him, Daddy. He says the police chief needs to understand." The adults exchanged glances. After a moment, Redfeather nodded. "I'd like to see these horses for myself." In the barn, Hope was standing alert, as if sensing the urgency of the situation. Her condition had improved remarkably in the short time since her rescue, another indication that whatever modifications had been made to her biology included accelerated healing. Star stood beside his mother, his posture betraying none of the newborn awkwardness that should have been present in a foal his age. "This is Chief Redfeather," Marcus introduced. "He's going to help us get to the reservation." Star approached, the police chief without hesitation, stopping directly in front of him. The miniature foal's intelligent eyes studied the man with obvious assessment. "He's deciding if he can trust you," Lily explained, moving to stand beside Star. "He's careful about who he shows things to." Redfeather, to his credit, showed no discomfort at being scrutinized by a horse that barely reached his knees. He knelt to the foal's level, a gesture of respect that seemed to satisfy Star. "My people believe all creatures carry wisdom," he said, simply. "Some just speak it more clearly than others." Star nickered softly, then extended his neck, positioning the white star marking on his forehead near Redfeather's hand. Lily placed her palm against the marking first, then guided the police chief's larger hand to join hers. The now familiar blue-white glow emanated from the point of contact, spreading outward to surround both Star and the humans touching him. Redfeather's eyes widened slightly, but he remained steady, his hand firm against the foal's forehead. The images that formed were different this time, more structured, almost like a briefing. Marcus watched as Star showed the police chief everything: the laboratory, the experiments, Porter and his team, their pursuit, their capabilities, and their determination to recapture what they considered their property. When the connection broke, Redfeather was silent for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Finally, he rose to his full height, his decision clearly made. "These are not just horses," he said, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "They are beings with intelligence and spirit. On our land, they would be considered sacred." He turned to Marcus. "My officers will provide full escort to the reservation. Once there, you'll be under tribal protection." "These people have governmental connections," Marcus warned. "They may try to force access to tribal land." "They can try." Redfeather's tone was steel wrapped in velvet. Wind River has sovereignty rights. Any incursion without tribal permission would violate federal treaties. His eyes narrowed, and while we respect those treaties, we also defend them, vigorously. The plan came together quickly after that. Hope and Star would travel in Dr. Weaver's horse trailer, with Lily riding inside to keep them calm. Marcus would follow in his truck with their belongings. The tribal police would provide escort the entire journey, approximately 4 hours through winding mountain roads to reach the heart of the Wind River Reservation. "We leave in 20 minutes, Redfeather instructed. "I've dispatched additional units to watch the perimeter roads. If Porter's team makes a move, we'll know." As they prepared for departure, Marcus pulled Mrs. Blackfeather aside. "You're coming with us, right? After everything you've done, they might target you too." The elder woman smiled serenely. "My home is here. I am too old to run and too stubborn to hide." She patted his arm reassuringly. "Do not worry for me. I have lived in harmony with the spirits for many years. They watch over their own. At least let some of the tribal officers stay." "My nephew has already arranged it," she interrupted gently. "2 of his best will remain, though I told him it was unnecessary. Go, take care of your daughter and the spirit horses. That is where you are needed most." Dawn was breaking as the small convoy departed, painting the eastern sky in shades of gold and rose. They traveled northwest, following routes that avoided main highways and population centers. Chief Redfeather's officers maintained constant radio communication, reporting all clear as they progressed deeper into Wyoming's rugged terrain. By mid-morning, they had entered the outer boundaries of Wind River territory, the landscape changing. Subtly, more pristine, less touched by development, Marcus felt a growing sense of cautious optimism. Perhaps they had escaped Porter's reach, at least for now. That hope was shattered as they rounded a bend in the mountain road and faced an unexpected roadblock. 2 black SUVs were positioned across both lanes, with armed men in tactical gear. Stationed behind them, not military, Their gear was too varied, their positioning too irregular for proper armed forces. Private contractors, then. Mercenaries. Chief Redfeather's lead vehicle slowed, but didn't stop, his officers clearly assessing the situation. Through the radio Marcus had been given, he heard the chief's calm voice. "Stand by, this is tribal land. They have no legal authority to block access." The convoy halted 100 yards from the roadblock. Redfeather emerged from his vehicle, hand deliberately away from his weapon, and approached the line of SUVs. A man stepped forward to meet him, not Porter, but someone with the same air of authority. The two engaged in conversation that grew visibly tense, Redfeather's posture becoming more rigid as the exchange continued. After several minutes, the chief returned to his vehicle and spoke over the radio to the entire convoy. "They're claiming federal authority, Department of Defense contractors with orders to secure escaped military research subjects. They have paperwork, but it's questionable. I've informed them they're in violation of tribal sovereignty and have 15 minutes to clear the road before we remove them." "What if they don't move?" Dr. Weaver's voice came through the radio, tense with worry. "Then we have a problem," Redfeather replied evenly, "because I'm not letting them through." Marcus assessed their options. The road was too narrow to turn the vehicles around quickly. Behind them lay miles of winding mountain passes, perfect territory for an ambush if they retreated. Ahead was the roadblock, and beyond it the safety of the reservation's interior. In the trailer ahead, Lily was with the horses. If Porter's men attempted to seize them by force, she would be in the crossfire. The thought sent cold fear through Marcus's veins. As if sensing his thoughts, the radio crackled again. "Mr. Reed," Redfeather's voice came through, "I suggest you join Dr. Weaver in the trailer. The next few minutes may be unpredictable. Your daughter should not be alone." Marcus didn't need to be told twice. He quickly exited his truck and jogged to the horse trailer, climbing inside to find Lily sitting calmly between Hope and Star, her small hand resting on the miniature foal's neck. "It's okay, Daddy," she said as he entered. "Star says help is coming." Before Marcus could ask what she meant, a new sound cut through the tension, the distinctive whoomp, whoomp, whoomp of helicopter rotors. Not one helicopter, but several, approaching, fast, from the direction of the reservation. Through the small window of the trailer, Marcus could see 3 military helicopters appearing over the ridge, sleek, black UH-60 Blackhawks displaying the insignia of the National Guard. They circled, once overhead, then 2 landed on the wider section of road behind the tribal police vehicles, while the 3rd hovered menacingly over the mercenaries' roadblock. The radio came to life again, this time with an unfamiliar voice. "Chief Redfeather, this is Colonel Thomas Reynolds, Wyoming National Guard. We received your request for assistance regarding unauthorized paramilitary activity on reservation land. Please confirm your situation." Redfeather's response was immediate. "Colonel, we have civilian contractors blocking access to tribal territory, claiming Department of Defense authority to seize private property. They are armed and refusing to disperse." "Understood. Please, stand by." Through the trailer window, Marcus watched as soldiers deployed from the landed helicopters, moving with disciplined precision to secure the area around the convoy. Meanwhile, the hovering Blackhawk trained its spotlight on the roadblock, a clear message to the mercenaries below. A new voice came over a loudspeaker, amplified enough to reach everyone in the vicinity. "Attention armed personnel at the roadblock. This is Colonel Reynolds of the Wyoming National Guard. You are engaged in unauthorized paramilitary activity on sovereign tribal land. Lower your weapons and present your credentials for verification immediately, or you will be treated as hostile forces." The effect was electric. The mercenaries, clearly unprepared for National Guard intervention, began a hasty consultation among themselves. Their leader made a call on his satellite phone, his gestures becoming increasingly agitated as the conversation progressed. How did the National Guard know to come? Dr. Weaver whispered, watching the scene unfold with astonishment. Marcus looked at Lily, who was smiling mysteriously, her hand still resting on Star's neck. The miniature foal's intelligent eyes met his, and Marcus understood. Star, he said simply. He reached out somehow. Lily nodded. He found someone who would listen, someone important, with dreams like pictures. Outside, the standoff was resolving. The mercenaries were standing down, moving their vehicles to clear the road under the watchful eyes of National Guard soldiers. Colonel Reynolds had joined Chief Redfeather, the two leaders conferring with professional respect. After several tense minutes, Redfeather approached the trailer. "The road is clear," he reported. "Colonel Reynolds has ordered the contractors to withdraw completely from tribal land. His soldiers will escort us the rest of the way to ensure there are no further incidents." "How did the National Guard get involved?" Marcus asked, genuinely curious about the extent of Star's influence. A flicker of amusement crossed Redfeather's normally stoic features. "Officially, an anonymous tip about armed personnel impersonating federal agents on reservation land. Unofficially," he glanced at Star. "Colonel Reynolds mentioned having an unusually vivid dream last night about protecting special horses on Wind River. Says he couldn't shake the feeling it was important." Lily beamed with pride, hugging Star's neck. "See, I told you he found help." The convoy reorganized with National Guard vehicles now integrated into the escort. As they finally moved past the point where the roadblock had been, Marcus caught sight of the mercenary leader watching their passing with cold fury. Their eyes met briefly, and Marcus recognized the promise in the man's gaze. This wasn't over, but for now at least, they had protection, not just from the tribal police, but from legitimate military forces. Whatever connections Porter had in the government, they apparently didn't extend to commanding the National Guard. The remainder of the journey passed without incident. As they traveled deeper into reservation territory, the landscape opened up into breathtaking. The reservation felt like another world, vast plains rolling into distant mountains, where the pressure of modern life faded, replaced by an ancient rhythm that pulsed from the very earth. Their destination was a small ranch belonging to Redfeather's cousin, nestled in a sheltered valley near the center of tribal lands. As they approached, Marcus saw several log buildings surrounding a large barn and corral. People were waiting, elders in traditional dress, younger tribal members, all watching solemnly as the convoy arrived. "Word travels fast here," Redfeather explained, "especially when it involves spirit messengers." The welcome was dignified but warm. The tribal elders approached first, led by a white-haired man whose deeply lined face spoke of wisdom earned through decades. He stopped before the trailer where Hope and Star were being unloaded. "I am Joseph." "Running Bear," he said. "Our people have been expecting you." Lily, who had remained close to Star throughout the journey, looked up with interest. "You knew we were coming." The elder smiled. "Many among us still dream the old dreams, little one. For 3 nights we have seen visions of special horses, with star markings, horses that speak without words and show truth through light. The ancestors told us to prepare." Star approached Running Bear without hesitation, extending his muzzle in greeting. The elder bowed slightly, acknowledging the foal with reverence. "You honor us with your presence," he said. "Our land is your land, our protection your shield, for as long as you wish to stay." Hope remained cautious, staying close to Dr. Weaver. Running Bear observed her wariness with sadness. "She has known much cruelty from humans. It will take time for those wounds to heal. But here, she will find only gentleness and respect." The ranch proved ideal for their needs. The barn was spacious, the corral secure. The land surrounding them was tribal territory, making unauthorized access difficult. That evening, a special ceremony was held. Drums beat a steady rhythm under the star-filled sky, prayers offered in the native tongue, sage smoke curling upward to carry their words to the heavens. "This ceremony honors the spirit connection," Running Bear explained. It acknowledges these horses as bearers of wisdom and seeks the ancestors' protection. Lily sat entranced, her small face illuminated by firelight. Star stood beside her, his star-shaped marking glowing faintly. Even Hope appeared more relaxed, grazing peacefully nearby. "Will they be safe here?" Marcus asked quietly. Running Bear considered the question. The men who seek them have power in the outside world, money, weapons, influence. But here they face different powers. He gestured to the people gathered around the fire. Our sovereignty, our unity, our connection to this land, and, he added, looking at Star, powers they cannot understand. Marcus worked with tribal security forces to establish defenses, drawing on his military experience. Dr. Weaver focused on Hope and Star's health. Hope's strength returned rapidly, her movements becoming more confident. Star's abilities developed in ways that both fascinated and astonished them. His brain structure must be different, Dr. Weaver told Marcus one evening. The ability to project images, to influence dreams. It's beyond conventional neuroscience. Is it stable? Marcus asked. Is it harming him? Dr. Weaver shook her head. If anything, he gets healthier the more he uses it, and his bond with Lily grows stronger every day. Indeed, Lily had blossomed. Her speech had returned, and her nightmares ceased. She spent hours with Star and Hope, sometimes reading aloud, other times simply sitting with them, her hand on Star's marking. She talks to Star in her mind now, Marcus told Dr. Weaver. They've developed their own private channel. 2 weeks passed peacefully. Then one morning, Lily came running from the corral, her face pale. "Daddy, Star says they're coming, lots of them, with machines to find him. They'll come at night when the moon is dark." Marcus immediately alerted Redfeather. The tribal council convened, their expressions grave. "How many?" Marcus asked Lily. "Did Star show you?" Lily nodded. 3 groups. They have things on their heads to see in the dark and special guns that don't make noise. "A tactical insertion team," Marcus muttered. "Professional operators, not just mercenaries." "We need to move Hope and Star deeper into tribal territory," Redfeather suggested. "The Canyon of Ancestors. No vehicles can access it. Only our medicine. People know the approach," Running Bear agreed. "The spirit path will lead us." As night fell, they embarked on their journey, Hope following tribal guides with surprising confidence. Star stayed close to Lily, occasionally projecting warnings that helped them avoid Porter's scouts. By midnight, they reached the Canyon of Ancestors, a hidden sanctuary marked with ancient petroglyphs eerily resembling Star's marking. As they watched from their concealed position, Porter's men executed their raid with military precision, only to be intercepted by tribal police. The confrontation was brief. The operators withdrew. "They're leaving," Redfeather confirmed. "Our people held the line." But Star remained uneasy. Lily placed a hand on his marking, and the blue-white glow returned. "Porter isn't with them," she whispered. "He's coming here. He has a special tracker that can find Star." A voice emerged from the darkness. "Close enough, Sergeant Reed." Porter stepped into view, alone. "Remarkable creatures," he murmured, eyes locked on Star. "The foal led me straight to you. The more," he projected, "the stronger the signal. Ironic, isn't it?" Marcus positioned himself between Porter and the horses. "You're trespassing on sacred land." Porter smirked. "This isn't about legalities. It's about a 15-year research project worth billions. Imagine the intelligence applications, the ability to project images directly into an enemy's mind at her." "What cost?" Dr. Weaver interrupted. "The suffering you inflicted, acceptable sacrifices," Porter said dismissively. "History proves progress requires difficult choices." Running Bear stepped forward. "This land answers to older laws than yours." The canyon walls began to glow, the petroglyphs pulsing with the same blue-white light as Star's marking. Porter faltered. "What is this? Some kind of trick?" Star stepped forward, his marking blazing. Porter froze. His expression shifted, confusion, then horror. Whatever Star projected into his mind, only he knew. When the light faded, Porter stood trembling, his arrogance gone. "What have you done to me?" he whispered. Running Bear answered. "He showed you truth, the pain you caused, the consequences of your actions, and perhaps something more." Porter backed away. "Keep them. Keep the abominations. I'm done." He fled into the night, a man haunted. In the weeks that followed, Porter's project mysteriously shut down. Hope and Star thrived. Lily's connection with Star deepened, and other children on the reservation discovered they could communicate with him, though none as completely as Lily. One afternoon, Marcus watched Lily and Star racing across the meadow. Running Bear joined him. "Your daughter runs with the spirit now." Marcus nodded. "I was so afraid for her after her mother died. I thought I'd lost her too." "Sometimes we must lose our way to find a better path," the elder said. The horses were sent to guide. "You hear?" As if sensing his thoughts, Star turned toward Marcus, his white marking catching the sunlight, flashing with a brilliance that felt almost like an answer. "Here's a compelling call to action you can use at the end of your video. If you enjoyed this story and want more thrilling tales like this, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update. Join our growing community and be part of the adventure. Would you like a more customized version to match your channel's tone?